Yo, what's up guys, it's Bluestone, and before I get into today's video, let me just say that literally 100% of y'all who watch my videos are not subscribed. And it would be greatly appreciated if you like and subscribe because it would really help on my channel. Now let's get into the video. I always claim to be a gamer, but do I play other franchises besides the ones I always play? Well, I try. One franchise that I have been playing a lot recently is Ace Attorney. I've been playing literally all of the games except for the Professor Layton crossover because I cannot afford it and it's not on modern platforms. But there's always sailing the seven seas, if you know what I mean. The only Ace Attorney games I haven't completed was the Great Ace Attorney games. Mostly because I got bored, or maybe I'm just getting tired of playing the Ace Attorney games. I mean, I did play 8 games in a row, so it would not surprise me if I'm just getting tired of the games. In today's video, I'll be talking about the worst Ace Attorney game and maybe the worst video game I've ever played. And that game is Ace Attorney Dual Destinies. And man, this game sucks. Out of all the games, I think this one has the worst writing and the worst story. Also, it's just kind of ugly. Also, they shafted Clavier Gavin and replaced him with this weeb. I don't like Simon and I never will. I understand he has his fans, but good golly, his backstory is just bad. Anyway, I'll be going over this game and looking into why this game, in my opinion, is the worst one in the franchise. And yeah, major spoilers ahead for this game and some of the other Ace Attorney games, especially the ones in this collection. So there will be spoilers for Spirit of Justice and Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. So if you haven't played any of those games, or any of just the games I'm talking about in general, you should probably do that before watching this video. But if you don't care enough, you can continue watching. So, Ace Attorney Dual Destinies is a sequel to Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. At least that's what Capcom wants you to think. This game feels very disconnected from some of the other Ace Attorney games, and the only connections it has to Apollo Justice as well, including Apollo himself in the game, and featuring Clavier Gavin in this game in one episode. Yeah, Clavier Gavin is the prosecutor in Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, and he is the brother of Christoph Gavin, aka Apollo's old mentor. And I say old because, well, he got arrested and he's also the main villain of that game. Yeah, Apollo Justice was a crazy game. And I also think it is the best Ace Attorney game, but you didn't hear that from me. Actually, when making this video, I learned that a lot of people hate Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, and I don't understand why. That game is great. It has some issues, but despite that, the game is so good, man. People are missing out. Anyway, I digress. This game also takes another thing from Apollo Justice, and it's a plot point about the Dark Age of the Law, which supposedly started a while ago after Phoenix lost his badge. But in this game, they act like the Dark Age of the Law literally just started, and it also ends really quickly as well. Yeah, like when you beat the final episode of the game, they act like the Dark Age of the Law just literally ended, and it's such a dumb thing. And this game's plot is centered around that Dark Age and how it started. I think they don't really explain it very well, but I'll go in depth into the story at a later segment. This game also features a new Ace Attorney, and her name is Athena Sykes. I'm sorry, but she is not that interesting at all. I don't like her very much. She's not as good as characters like Maya or Trucy. Also, she gets mocked by one of the Payne brothers. How do you do that, man? Also, she has this gimmicky robot thing named Widget, and it can utilize her ability to sense emotions. It's kind of a dumb thing, and this is when the game introduces a new mechanic to Ace Attorney, aka the Mood Matrix, but I'll go in depth about that at a later time. Also, Apollo returns in this game like I mentioned earlier, and he gets some character development in this game, but the character development is like very minuscule, but I feel like he gets better character development and far more character development in the sequel, aka Spirit of Justice. Despite Dual Destinies being technically the second Apollo Justice game, this game feels like it doesn't really include him much, especially in episode 4 and 5. He's just barely featured in those episodes, and he's also barely in the DLC episode either, and I'm not sure why. Okay, well, he is in the final episode, but mostly at the tail end. Also, to clarify, I've never played the DLC episode, mostly because I got tired of playing this stupid game.
I just can't do it. I can't take this shit no more, man.
And last but not least, Phoenix Wright himself is in this game. And yeah, he stole this game from Apollo. And I have no idea if it was Capcom's fault for why Phoenix was the main character of this game or not, but it is a bit bizarre. Phoenix in this game does not get any character development at all, and he's also pretty much reverted to how he was in his older games, which is a big problem, to be honest. Like, Phoenix Wright feels like a nothing burger of a character in this game. Like, there's nothing interesting about Phoenix. There's also nothing really interesting about all of the other characters as well, especially Athena. I don't really like Athena that much, man. Also, he is nothing like his character in Apollo Justice. Like, say what you will about Apollo Justice, but he was actually a really good character in that game, bro. And I'd argue that he was at his best in Apollo Justice. Also, Phoenix Wright gets a new suit in this game. The new suit is fine, but it's not as iconic as the old one, though. But you can also use the old suit in this game as well, which is pretty cool. The gameplay of this game is par for the course for an Ace Attorney game. It has investigations and the usual courtroom battles. Wait, what? Courtroom battles. They really haven't changed the gameplay much since. Actually, they haven't really changed the gameplay at all. In case you haven't played an Ace Attorney game, I'll just quickly explain it. So just like the old games, the investigations usually take like 1 to 2 days, and same with the trials, except some of the episodes really feel like they shouldn't have 2 trial days or 2 investigation days. Investigations work exactly like how the older games did. Look for clues and look for evidence that is tied to the case in some shape or form. And just like the older games, the court record is your best friend, as it stores all of the information and evidence you have found so far. Talking to people is one of the main factors of gaining info, and sometimes you may have to present evidence that you have already to gain more information or update older information. After completing an investigation, it's time to go to court, and this is where the main gameplay of Ace Attorney begins. In court, you have to listen to witness testimonies and then do a cross-examination, where you listen to the same testimony from earlier, but now you have to find contradictions in that same testimony by pressing a statement or presenting the right evidence on the right statement. Sometimes during a trial, you may have to make a choice or present evidence, and sometimes you have to point out something on a photo or diagram. This game introduces a new mechanic in courtroom battles called revisualization. During these segments, you have to think over the entire case and make the right choices and come to a conclusion. This is definitely one of the better features this game has added. So some of the weird mechanics from the older Ace Attorney games return, like Cyclops and Apollo's bracelet, but the bracelet is mostly used for investigations instead of trials. But in the final trial of the game, you do get to use the bracelet. But in Spirit of Justice, they ended up making how you can use the bracelet more in courtrooms. The bracelet is used to focus in on someone and search for what they are doing subconsciously. For example, in Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, this was used during the first trial to find out if this fake Russian lady is hiding something. And to find this out, you have to focus on the back of her neck, because she is subconsciously touching the back of her neck because she got hit on the back of her neck. Yeah, that's how that mechanic works. And they don't use it in clever ways in this game, unfortunately. And now Cyclops aren't used that much in this game either, but if you're playing the DLC episode, they use the Cyclops a lot more in that one. Anyway, Cyclops are locks on someone's heart, and they appear whenever someone is hiding something, and you have to use evidence and make specific choices to unlock these Cyclops. And now a brand new mechanic that was introduced in this game is the Mood Matrix. This mechanic is pretty gimmicky, even more gimmicky than the bracelet and the Cyclops. So basically, Athena has a superpower, and that superpower is being able to sense how someone is feeling from the tone of their voice. At least that's how Phoenix describes it. A little robot is named Widget, and it can tap into this ability, and then you have to examine the unexpected emotions that person is feeling and get another statement out of them. This will then update the testimony and lower the noise level. Except sometimes the noise level will increase, but that is rare and only happen if someone is gaslighting themselves. And sometimes someone can have out of control emotions, and then you have to root out what is causing these out of control emotions by using the probe feature. You can point out whatever is causing the issue, and this will make things return to normal. Well, sometimes. And yeah, that's about it for the gameplay of this game. And like I mentioned earlier, this game is basically the same as the other games when it comes to the gameplay. Now, another thing I want to say is that I think this game is ugly, personally. I don't think the 3D is a good look for these games, in my personal opinion. I think these games look better in 2D. Plus, they had a lot more charm to them in 2D. The only Ace Attorney games that looked good in 3D were the great Ace Attorney games. Well, Spirit of Justice looks pretty good, actually. And I'm going to be honest, Phoenix Wright's model in this game does not fit the new art style they made for this game at all. In fact, his model isn't even in the new art style. What the fudge? But I will say, Dual Destiny's models are pretty well animated. I'll give them that, but they're still kind of ugly looking, especially characters like Edgeworth and Clavier Gavin. In my personal opinion, out of all the 3D games, I think Dual Destinies is probably the worst looking one. But then again, the Professor Layton one looks the worst, but I guess it has steep competition. Here's the longest segment in the video where I go way too much into detail about the episodes, but I kinda have to do that, so whatever. So this game has a story. I mentioned it in the overview earlier, but just like Ace Attorney 3 and 4 and the Investigations games, this game does have an actual plot line, but it's not really that good. It actually has some issues, maybe even a lot of issues, and especially the writing. Oh, the writing. And it's most notable in episode 2, but another thing weird that this game does is how the episodes are ordered, but I'll explain that a little later. And unfortunately, this game's episodes go from okay to straight up awful, and then actually good. It's a bloody roller coaster, man. So I'll be talking about the episodes in order, excluding the DLC episode, because I really did not want to play this game anymore. And also I'll be ranking the episodes as well. So let's get into it. So this is pretty par for the course for an introduction episode for an Ace Attorney game, except for the fact that this episode has 2 days for the trial, which is a first for an Ace Attorney game. And also something different this game has is anime cutscenes that are fully voice acted. I think only the Versus Professor Layton game had that, if I'm not wrong. Also, this cutscene has Phoenix talking on the phone with someone, and spoiler alert, that person he is calling is Edgeworth. The context for this cutscene is explained later in the game, I think. I don't necessarily remember. This episode involves a crazed policeman bombing a courthouse and blaming it on this girl named Juniper Woods. Also, for some reason, Apollo is edgy now, and this doesn't make sense until later on. But yeah, this case is set after episode 4 but before episode 5. I don't know why they did this, but the reason why Juniper is being blamed for the bombing is because of this plushie. The bomb was supposedly hidden there, and the tail had her fingerprints on it or something. Also, there was a victim in this case, and her name is Candace Arm. Yeah, the pun in her name is very obvious. Also, this is the episode where you get introduced to Athena and you play as her for a bit. Yeah, this is where she gets mocked by one of the Payne brothers, aka Gaspin Payne. I wonder if his name is a pun on gas pain, which is something that I'm currently dealing with. Anyway, you get this cutscene showing a bit of Athena's past, and it shows that she's scared of courtrooms or something. And then the man himself, Phoenix Wright, finally appears, and you get to play as him. And this is where you get your first witness testimonies from this guy named Ted Tonate. Yeah, these names suck. And yeah, this is the very same policeman from earlier. If the intro didn't make it obvious already, this guy's the real suspect, and Phoenix Wright rightfully thinks he is suspicious. But yeah, after this is where you get properly introduced to the mood matrix mechanic. You get to fully utilize it here. Well, not completely. Some of the new mechanics get introduced in the next episode. Yeah, there's even more mechanics, but I mentioned that earlier in the gameplay segment. But yeah, you have to use the mood matrix during this testimony due to the fact that the Juniper lady is extremely scared, so you gotta play therapist here. Also, she has a crush on Apollo, which I think is really funny. Also, speaking of Apollo, yeah, he gets bonked on the back of the head and now he's more injured than before. So basically, the rest of this case is finding out how Candace Arm didn't actually die in the explosion, but was actually killed by Ted. And also how Ted was the one who blew up the place, and also explains that Apollo was assaulted by Ted as well. Yeah, Ted did literally everything in this case. So yeah, this case is boring, but not bad. The overall idea and plot wasn't too bad. I'd put this episode in the number 2 spot, but unfortunately, the next episode is actually terrible. Now, here's the worst episode in the game. This one is so long and so boring. The writing is just, how can I say this? Not the worst writing I've ever seen, but it's really bad still. Chronologically, this is technically the first episode. Yeah, I don't know what they were doing for this game, man. But the order goes like this. Episode 2 first, episode 3 next, DLC episode, which I didn't play, then episode 4, episode 1, and then finally episode 5. Why the fudge did they do this? Okay, so the intro cutscene of this episode literally shows you who the murderer is, and now it's just a painful and long process of finding out why and how he did it. I want to die. In this episode, you get to play as Apollo, and as Apollo, you hang out with Trucy Wright. Also, man, Trucy's model looks so ugly in this game. But anyway, you meet Trucy's friend named Jinxie, and she is scared of yokai. And oh yeah, speaking of yokai, this episode's all about them. And there was this yokai named Tenmataro, who's mentioned a lot in this episode. And then there's this wrestler who is Nine-Tailed Fox or whatever, but he's not as cool as Steel Samurai. But yeah, after this part is where the murder from the first cutscene actually takes place. So you actually don't get to see the murderer until after this investigation. And they arrest this guy named Damien Tenma, who was Jinxie's dad, mostly because he doesn't have an alibi.
I forgot to mention that Athena also gets introduced in this episode. I literally completely forgot to write it in the script. Anyway, back to the video.
But also during this case, you get introduced to Bobby Fulbright. He's no Gumshoe or Emma Sky, but he's okay. Also, this guy's pretty important to the story, but I'll cover that later. I'm talking way later. There's also this weird guy named Phineas Filch, and he just randomly steals stuff off of people. And a bit later, you actually get to see the murderer, and he is this guy named LaBelle, and his hair color changes every time he appears until it turns green. This is literally the Joker.
I'm the Joker, baby!
You'll learn that the Damien Tenma dude actually got blackmailed and got his briefcase stolen. And yeah, it's pretty obvious who did it, but that comes later. Now it's time to go to court, kill me. And this is where you get introduced to Simon Blackwell, aka the Massive Weeb. Turns out he's a criminal, allegedly. So I'm gonna be honest, the rest of this case is like 10 times worse than before. The twists that it introduces here are just, I can't even, man. They try to push the whole thing about the mayor being the murderer, even though he was knocked out. It makes literally no sense. Apparently the murderer used both a spear and a statue to kill the alderman. I don't get it, man. And then to make matters worse, the mayor starts acting all stupid for the rest of this episode. Yeah, he starts acting as if he's Tenma Taro, and they drag this on for as long as possible. In some moments, it's kind of funny, like with this guard in the detention center serving Tenma Taro. See, that's funny. But the rest of this case is hot doo-doo, and we're about to get into the thick of it. So apparently this guy swallowed the key, and I'm not even gonna bother questioning it. Also, his daughter sleepwalks, but they try to push this into a narrative about her being possessed. Dog, just kill me already. Also, LaBelle has blue hair now. What, is he gonna start playing Fortnite now?
Say to me, you little
Also, when you present the blackmail letter to him, he gets so mad. Just look at how many uppercase letters there are, man. Unrelated, but I just imagine this guy sounding like James Charles for some reason. Anyway, so there's an actual puzzle to open the forbidden door, and I think this is the only part of the episode that I actually like. So when you go inside, there's some hand cream on the floor, and there's this dusty statue. There's also an air vent that'll come back later. And later on, you get to use the bracelet. Finally, you learn that the mayor apparently confessed about killing the alderman. This is false, by the way. Okay, time to go back to court. And this consists of disproving junk like Tenma Taro being Jinxie, and it was apparently Filch instead. He was trying to steal stuff from the forbidden chamber or something, and he escaped using that air vent earlier, I think. Or did he get in via the air vent? I don't remember. I hate this episode so much, dude. Okay, and then LaBelle finally shows up, and now he's the Joker. He even has a purple suit, man. And LaBelle tries to push a narrative about him faking his alibi and hearing the mayor confess to killing the alderman, but this is just more misinformation. The rest of this case can literally just be boiled down to misinformation, and I'm not joking. John Tenma has a testimony, but it's just another excuse to use the mood matrix mechanic. Yeah, his testimony is just useless. And anyway, let's just move on. The big reveal is that LaBelle disguised himself as the mayor by using the Nine Tails mask and tricked Jinxie by saying, I killed the alderman. Yeah, this reveal just kind of sucks, man. But after that, it reveals that LaBelle was the murderer and his hair is actually white. And finally, this awful episode ends. Dude, I hate episode 2, man. This one was so bad. It's so badly written as well. The whole yokai thing is undercooked. So boring, man. This episode goes in dead last. Anyway, time for the actual only good episode in this game, aka episode 3. So this is probably the best episode in the game. It has an interesting premise, and it doesn't spoil who the true suspect is in the opening cutscene. And it also doesn't fall off really hard in the second half. Awesome. So this one is about a murder in the Themis Law Academy. And the murder is suspiciously almost exactly the same as the murder in the mock trial they have at the school. So in this episode, you play as Athena and defend a familiar character, aka Juniper. Yes, he's accused of murder again. Twice in the same game. Crazy. Besides seeing Juniper again, you get introduced to this guy, Aristotle Means. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. And he's kind of important. And yeah, he kind of just looks like a statue, which I find really funny. So this episode is set before episode 1, and this is technically Apollo's first time meeting Juniper, and this is the first time Athena has seen her in a while. But after this introduction is when the murder happens. Well, the murder happened the day before, but whatever. Yeah, you go to the stage and the lady is dead. Her name is Constant Court or Corte, I don't know, and she is the victim in this case. But after this is when you meet Juniper's friends, but this gets cut short when she gets arrested. because of, well, circumstances. Also, the murder was done in a way where she would be blamed for it. And the prosecutor from Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney returns, aka Clavier Gavin, the most underused prosecutor besides fudging Godot. Except Godot has a reason why he's underused. Anyway, Clavier wants to help Athena because he wants to know what happened to Constant Corte, or Court, who was his mentor. And this is where you get to play the mock trial for a bit. You get to feel how it was in the first Apollo Justice game. I missed that game, bro. Also, why is Clavier so ugly in this game? Like, bro, he seriously looks awful here. Anyway, the investigation in this is just mostly consisting of talking to people and not really interacting with stuff much. So I'll skip ahead onto the trial. So this trial is pretty interesting. You get a brief explanation of the case by Bobby down the street. And then you get a testimony from this cardboard box lady named Miriam Scuttlebug. And her testimony is just about how the murder and the mock trial script are very similar. Her other testimony explains obviously seeing Juniper wearing a stage costume, which is a reference to Apollo Justice, by the way. And she allegedly led her to the body, but she didn't even see it, by the way. So then it's revealed that it wasn't actually Juniper wearing the costume, but instead it was one of Juniper's friends named Robin Newman. And then another revelation is revealed, and it turns out Robin Newman isn't a guy, but actually a girl. She was raised to be a guy, but she just wanted to be a girl, so she wanted to be an artist as well. But her parents were holding her back. Crazy. Another one of Juniper's friends has a testimony, but I could really care less about this guy. The rest of this trial revolves around the tape recorder, and by the way, the audio on there is doctored. But that isn't revealed until the day 2 investigation. Also, Athena says this crazy line during this part of the trial, and Apollo's response is pretty funny too. Also, then the day 1 trial ends with this bombshell, and it's a photo that was allegedly taken before the incident, but the clock in this photo is an hour ahead. So the day 2 investigation is more like an investigation than day 1. Clavier returns, and he wants you to fix his statue. Yeah, it's statue repair time, except for Phoenix Wright statue. This comes back a bit later. But after statue repair time, it's time for Athena to apologize to Miriam because she called her a failure during the day 1 trial. Then you get some photos of some various people involved with the case setting up the stage. But after this, various stuff gets revealed about how the tape recorder is actually doctored, and how that one guy with glasses named Hugh or something may have been bribing people for better grades. Now it's time for the day 2 trial, where it's revealed that Hugh is actually a 25-year-old man and not 18, because number 1, he's a crane operator. Number 2, he took a 7-year break from school, according to Simon Blackwell. Also, it was not him who were bribing people for better grades, it was actually his parents. And in his last testimony, it was also revealed that Professor Means was not watching the mock trial at all. So where was he? I don't know, that part wasn't explained. Also, Simon mentions Turnabout.
Say that again?
But Athena debunks his testimony, and then we get another funny line from her. And then Professor Means just starts crashing out, gets a mohawk. And dog, this is the funniest character in the franchise. Why does he look and act like this? The text on his chalkboard changes constantly, and it's kind of funny. Then Athena gets mogged by Means, and then she has a breakdown because she got mogged too hard. And then friends are her power, I guess. And then another revisualization sequence happens. And then it's revealed that the murder didn't happen in the art room, but instead happened at the stage. But the professor used the school banners to transfer the blood to the art room, and then hid Cortez's body in the Phoenix Wright statue. And then you get a demonstration of how that even works. And that's it for episode 3. Literally the only good episode in this game. And the writing here was not bad. It could have been better, but it's still way better than everything else in this game. And I like how it was mostly focused on Athena and Apollo. And I like how they gave attention to the other characters here as well. And they also explained some stuff pretty well in this episode. And also the trials weren't abysmal like they were in episode 2. This episode definitely goes into the #1 spot as it deserves. Unfortunately, the quality of the episodes go down from here. Well, it was already downhill before, but whatever, man. Wow, another bad episode. So episode 4 is pretty much just the first half of the final episode. Like, the final episode literally takes place directly after this one, so let's get into it. This one just starts you in the courthouse with no investigation. Well, not yet anyway. But this case is about how Apollo's best friend, Clay Terrain, well, very on the nose with that one, was murdered, and he died via stabbing to the chest. He was about to go to space with this guy named Solomon Starbuck, and the rocket they were about to board had bombs on it, and it blew up. The space center also got bombed, and they arrested Solomon Starbuck because he seems suspicious. Now Apollo must defend him in court. And Fulbright has a testimony, and all it is about him trying to push this false narrative against Solomon. But besides that, he also helped some people evacuate from the space center due to there being more bombs. This ends up coming back later. Also, the bomb transport case from episode 1 is here, but besides that, Solomon has testimony and it details about how him and Clay managed to escape the explosion, but the information he gives is kind of bad. And yeah, it's because Solomon doesn't remember much because he might have been slipped drugs, which isn't good. This does not get elaborated on at all.
Allow me to correct myself here. This actually does get elaborated on in episode 5. Yuri Cosmos, the director of the Space Center, is actually the one who slipped Solomon some sleeping drugs. Anyway, back to the video.
So this picture shows Solomon carrying Clay, but it's actually the reverse. It's actually Clay carrying Solomon, and this contradicts Simon's statement about Clay being dead and Solomon carrying his body. And this picture was taken before Clay's oxygen tank got ruptured, which will get explained later though. One thing in this case that never gets explained is how Clay managed to go down the ladder while carrying Solomon's knocked out body. There was strange oversight by the devs. But yeah, after Apollo's little breakthrough, the courtroom gets bombed, and this is when episode 1 takes place. Okay, so now we switch to Phoenix because Apollo is injured. Now, Phoenix must finish what Apollo started. So first off is the detention center where Solomon starts yapping about space. And second location is the Cosmos Space Center to investigate the case further. And then Yuri Cosmos shows up, except he starts yapping about his testimony and how it will be the greatest one ever. Now the annals of history will remember him. Okay. Moving on, Detective Fulbright is being weirdly helpful. He tells you about a witness he helped evacuate, and she was using the emergency ladder he told her to use, and she saw the real murderer. Wow, I hope this one does not come back later to bite him in the butt. After investigating the lobby, you meet this robot. He becomes important later, and yes, this game has robots, and it's not really surprising considering the fact that Ace Attorney 3 had people with scouters from Dragon Ball Z on their face. So this robot is named Ponko, and she shows you this exhibit. You get to see this photo from 7 years ago. It has some familiar faces here. Also, the woman at the end of the photo is Athena's mom, by the way. And time to move on and talk to Bobby again, except now he has Cyclops. And after breaking the Cyclops, you learn that Blackwell has been hunting a phantom from 7 years ago, aka the guy who killed Athena's mom and caused all the stuff with the rocket from 7 years ago. And yes, he is a spy. Going back to the entrance lets you meet Simon Blackwell's sister. Yeah, her name is Aura Blackwell, and she's mad about how Metasykes, aka Athena's mom, died, and now she takes her anger out on robots and abuses them. Well, she mostly does it to Klonko, the poor lad. She also hates lawyers and prosecutors due to a certain case, aka the UR1 incident, where Athena's mom died and supposedly Simon killed her, but that's false. Anyway, she's the witness who has seen the murder happen supposedly, and the murderer had a lighter with an Earth emblem on it. This becomes important later. And before moving on to the trial, Apollo tells Phoenix that he is taking a leave of absence because he's
Edgy.
now. I don't know why they wrote him like this in this game. It's so dumb. Even Phoenix didn't act like this when Mia died. Okay, moving on to the trial now. Oh, dude. This game just keeps dragging on, man. Well, one thing I can say that is that Yuri Cosmos is probably the only person keeping this episode from being bad. Well, besides Aura Blackwell at least. Detective Candace Arm was supposed to be a witness, but she died. So now we get to Yuri Cosmos instead. And oh my gosh, this testimony tracks on for so dang long. But I'll tell you what this testimony is about. So Mr. Cosmos and Candace Arm, before she died, supposedly witnessed the murder. And she shot at the murderer, and she supposedly shot 2 warning shots, but no, that is false. One of her bullets hit the holographic display, and the other hit Cosmos' badge. Now, there was a tiny bullet that was found in this case, and I'm pretty sure that it hit Clay's oxygen tank, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, this bullet comes back later, if I'm not wrong. And Phoenix exposes how Cosmos switched the places of the Space Museum to Launchpad 1 by using this knob. And you can see how in this photo it's horizontal, but in the most recent photo it's vertical, which means the places of the launch pads were switched. And another way you can tell that they were switched is because of the number on the ground. And Fulbright provides proof that Solomon is the murderer, and it's the lighter that the murderer used. It has the true culprit's fingerprints. And that's it for this episode. I'll put this episode in the number 4 spot. Ironic. I just don't like this episode very much. It's like really boring and just kind of lame. Also, they never elaborate on any of the stuff related to how Clay held Solomon's body. Like, how did you do that? Like, how did you carry him down the ladder? That never gets explained. That's literally a plot hole.
Objection!
Athena's fingerprints are on the lighter.
Uh-oh. Where am I?
Finally, this is the end of the game. I'm so tired of this game, man. This game ends with possibly the most underwhelming episode for any Ace Attorney game. And since this episode's long and dragged out, I'm just gonna try to get done with it as fast as possible. So Athena was arrested because it is believed that she's the murderer, and now Phoenix gotta defend her in court. So it's investigation time. This time, Trucy is with you, and Director Cosmos has some Cyclops, and breaking in reveals some info about who the true murderer is. And it's a spy, and he's been behind the bombings and the murder of Athena's mother's murder 7 years ago. Why did I write the script like that? That seemed so weird. Anyway, he originally thought that Simon was behind it all, but nope, he wasn't. And now Cosmos just keeps spinning. Ted Tone is at the detention center, and he reveals something crazy. He wasn't actually behind the bombing of the courtroom. It was actually some mysterious guy who was behind it, aka the spy. And by the way, this never gets talked about again, just like a lot of things in this game. Going back to the space center and going to the lab allows you to talk to Aura, and Apollo is here, and he's doing his own investigation. humiliation, and you probably get kicked out of her lab. And Trucy tries to go back to talk to Apollo, and then Phoenix just goes back home for some reason. And then there's a letter from Maya here. Wow, what a surprise. Pearl is in this game, except her role in the story has no relevance at all. And when you go back to the detention center again, Simon, Aura, and Fulbright are here, and there is an argument, and Simon is gonna die the next day. So Aura's gonna do something, and Wright asks him about 7 years ago, and he refuses to answer and leaves. And the Fulbright stuffs a bunch of stuff in your pocket related to 7 years ago, and now the robots are revolting. Or so they say. So basically, Aura took a bunch of people hostage, including Trucy, and now she wants to retrial the case from 7 years ago. And Edgeworth gets shoehorned in the story, and man, Edgeworth looks so weird in this game. Also, Pearl looks weird in this game as well. Man, Ace Attorney had a rough transition to 3D. Edgeworth apparently asked Wright to clear Simon's record a while ago, and now with this retrial, it can finally happen. And this coincides with the phone call that Phoenix had earlier in the game. And so you get to talk to Athena before the final trial, and she mentions how her earring's made out of moon rock. And by the way, the moon rock it's made out of got stolen as well, and this will be relevant soon. But at some point, she starts to think that she killed her own mother, which causes black Cyclops to appear. And the only other person to have these black Cyclops was Christoph Gavin from the first Apollo Justice game, except his Cyclops were only there because of how evil he was. Anyway, now it's time for the final trial, and this is extremely dragged out. Like, man, it really did not need to be 2 hours long, and I'll try to explain it as best as I can, and as short as I can.
My audio got messed up during this part, and I was completely speaking gibberish, so I am using text-to-speech. So Aura Blackquill technically has a testimony, but it's being interpreted via Fulbright, and it's about how Simon isn't the murderer and he was covering for someone, and that person was Athena. Okay, now back to the normal audio.
One thing that gets brought up is this image of Simon carrying a case, and everyone thinks that Athena's in this case, but Wright's theory is that Simon cut up Ponko and put Ponko inside the case, which is true, I guess, and Ponko is called as a witness for reasons I don't remember. And man, Edgeworth looks terrible, dude. Anyway, Ponko talks about how Athena hugged the medicine he fell. Edgeworth interprets this as murder and then says that Ponko, on the defendant's command, to move the body to the operating table, and he thinks that Athena used the repair function on the table on her mother, which is quite gruesome, mind you. And then Simon shows up and gives the most bull honky statement ever, and using the moon matrix, you can get a lot of info out of him, but at some point you learn the dark truth. When he arrived, Metis was already dead. Athena was trying to fix her. Simon tries to comfort Athena as she's about to have a mental breakdown. Phoenix Wright tries to bluff his way out of this, but Athena tells him to give up. But of course he doesn't. Does she know who she's talking to? Phoenix uses his usual methods and reveals that Athena actually used the utility knife instead of the katana. Then he gets mocked by Edgeworth, and then a verdict's about to be made. So now it's time for revisualization, and then it's revealed that the person that Athena stabbed was not her mother, but it was actually the Phantom, who was wearing a mask and also wearing Metis' jacket. So then the robots would recognize him as Metis instead of an intruder. So Athena stabbed him in the hand. So when you see the screen cap from the security footage of the man in question, he has bandages on his hand. And wow, what a mouthful. Anyway, Simon comes in with some research of the Phantom he had from 7 years ago. It was the last favor that Metis did for Simon before she died. It's the psych profile of the Phantom. He has no emotions or can control his emotions. So now Athena's innocent. Yay. Nope, Apollo comes in. He's like, no, I still think she sus. And he wants Phoenix to put these doubts to rest. So more fudging testimonies kill me. And so Apollo thinks Athena's the murderer because she was there during the day of the murder and he has proof or something. So Phoenix wants to prove that Athena isn't the murderer, so he comes up with some escape route that the murderer could have taken. And then because of this escape route, Phoenix realizes that the murderer could have been the Phantom. So if you wonder who the Phantom is, it's fudging Bobby Fulbright. Yeah, that mother clucker is the Phantom. And Simon takes over for Edgeworth while he investigates some stuff, and Aura goes to jail because of what she did. And Simon's a free man now. Yay. Okay, so Bobby has a testimony, but most of it is stuff to do with the lighter, and he's still trying to push this narrative that Athena is the murderer. But this ends up exposing the fact that the lighter is just a gun, and Athena would not have known that. And this leads to everyone finding out that Bobby faked the fingerprints on the lighter, and instead of Athena's prints, it was actually Clay's prints. And yeah, he put the lighter into Clay's hands to fake the prints, and then he lies about being a private investigator, but nobody believes that. Athena hops in to do some mood matrix on him, but then you find out he has no emotions. And then he tries to hack it, and then Widget starts wigging out, but then she tries to do the mood matrix again, and then he has emotion now. Anyway, he's scared of getting his identity exposed because he doesn't want to get shot by whomever wants him dead. And yeah, he does have a bunch of masks that look like past characters, which is kind of funny. And yes, he has a Phoenix Wright mask, and it's the funniest thing ever. If Phoenix believes that the moon rock he stole and sent to space, by the way, will expose his identity, and he's like, nah, that can't happen because the moon rock is gone. Then Phoenix is like, nah, Athena still has it, and her earring's made out of it. And he freaks out not knowing his true identity, and then he gets shot, which he doesn't die from, by the way. And yeah, Athena's not guilty, and that's it for this game. Thank the heavens. You know, this episode's actually worse than episode 4, so I'm putting it in the number 4 spot. I'm putting episode 4 in the number 3 spot, with episode 2 right below episode 5. I hate this game. So the main question at hand is this game bad? And yes, Yes, it is. Well, at least in my opinion. Some people might be able to find this game good, and you know what? Good for them. They're able to enjoy this game while I wasn't. I think the main problem about this game is how it's written, and there's some obvious issues, and sometimes there are topics that they just don't talk about enough, or there's just straight up a plot hole, like in episode 4 with Clay climbing down the ladder while holding Solomon. That literally does not get explained at all, man. And also, episode 2 is a big example of how bad the writing could be, man. Like, they spoil who the murderer is in the beginning of the episode, and then dragging out the entire Tenmataro thing. Not only was it boring, but it's also just a stupid idea in general, man. The plotline was so bad for episode 2. This game was also supposed to have a darker tone, but it really falls flat, man. A lot of the time, it feels like this game is trying to be more comedic instead of being darker. And episode 3 is a good example of that. And don't get me wrong, I love episode 3, but it has some issues, man. And you know what's crazy, though? Apollo Justice Ace Attorney feels like a darker tone more than this game. Like, the game actually tackles some seriously dark topics. Like, episode 3 and episode 2 were kind of dark. And episode 1 and 4 were just crazy episodes in general, man. It's a shame, though. They really wanted this game to be good, but it came out like trash. And this game gets absolutely mogged in every way from Apollo Justice and Spirit of Justice. Like, Spirit of Justice is a much better game than this one, and I actually really enjoyed playing that game compared to Dual Destinies. And people hate Spirit of Justice. People also hate Apollo Justice. I'm gonna be honest. I really like Apollo Justice. Like, story-wise, that game is my favorite Ace Attorney game. Like, people can say whatever they want, but I think Apollo Justice was the best one besides, like, Ace Attorney 3. Like, Trials and Tribulations cannot be beat, in my opinion, but I still think Apollo Justice is, like, right besides that one in terms of storyline. Like, it was really good. In my opinion, at least. I think Spirit of Justice was also pretty good, but it's not that high on the list because, for me, I think Ace Attorney 1 and 3 are the best. And same with Apollo Justice. I think Apollo Justice is like number 2 for me. I really did like the investigations games. Well, at least the second game. First game was like pretty mid. And I think Dual Destinies is like dead last for me in terms of like where I'd rank the Ace Attorney games. Another thing I want to say is that, man, the final act of Dual Destinies was dragged out so much. Even in Spirit of Justice, the final act was not dragged out for this long. And even though the final act of that game was literally just 2 episodes in one, like, it was not the best, but like, it was still way better than this game. And the final acts of both of those games cannot compare to Apollo Justice final episode. No, that one was crazy, especially with the Mason system. That was awesome, dude. And if I were to rate Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Dual Destinies, I would rate it a dirty 3.7 out of 10. This game sucks, and I think this is the worst video game I've ever played. Like, I played a lot of video games in my time, but for some reason, I feel like Dual Destinies is the worst video game I've ever played. Anyway, that's about it for me, dog. I'm out of here.